Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with the new Avengers/Transformers. Remember when Dr. Doom left to try talking things out with a neighboring nation that was being bombed? Yeah, looks like he made a U-turn and allied with the Decepticons, so he'll get to rule what's left of Earth when they're done plundering its energy. When the threat of their captive allies doesn't stop Autobots or Avengers from attacking the aggression wave array, a power-boosted Megatron tases Dr. Doom, picks up Luke Cage, and strolls outside to deal with the matter personally. The final issue's cover sees Meg looking incredulously at Spider-Man, perched on his index finger. This is why your mom told you not to pick your nose. There is kind of a humorous element to it, with Spidey's slightly tilted head as if quizzically looking at the tyrant. Though given what he's been through in previous issues, he could also be adding a false sense of calm to set up a snappy one-liner to go with a surprisingly effective attack. That, or asking Megs to tell him a story before he goes to bed. After the recap page, and with a little over 2 hours left on the war clock, Parker awakens with renewed strength and busts his restraints, as Blitzwing is incapacitated and nearly falls on him, courtesy of Dr. Doom.
Could you watch your aim?
Doom watches all, insect. He leaves nothing to chance. That is why Doom's streaming queues are constantly at capacity. Let us end this mission so I may finally complete watching glitch techs.
After quickly being introduced to Ratchet and Prowl and their respective goals of saving Pete and destroying the Psycho Prism, the webhead asks Doom whether or not he's rooting for Megatron to destroy our heroes outside with his newfound power. Naturally, Doom doesn't feel the need to explain himself, operating on his own code of honor for the needs of himself and his people.
That is why Doom only allows locally owned businesses in Latveria and forbids the establishment of Walmart stores. For there is only room for one malevolent force here, and that is Doom!
Ratchet has a plan to stop Megs, but it requires more sacrifice from the Wallcrawler.
Why do the words Spider-Man and sacrifice always appear together?
There are much worse words to be associated with. One More Day, Brand New Day, Joe Quesada, Dan Slott. Outside, Stark decides to handle the Decepticon leader himself, despite a warning that his capacitors are maxed out. Megs just tosses Luke Cage away to get caught by Falcon. So if he wasn't going to be used as a bargaining chip or crushed outright to demoralize his allies, what was the point of bringing him out anyway? And how does Shellhead react to his teammate being thrown about so carelessly?
You know, I normally prefer house music, but who says metal's dead?
Then proceeds to attack. I want to make a joke about a band where the instruments are played by actual houses, but I just find that line weird, even by comic book standards. It can't be Robert Downey Jr.'s influence, because this came out a year before he starred as Tony Stark in the Jon Favreau movie. Maybe they just really wanted a pun, which I can totally understand and even encourage. I just would have waited for a better setup. Even Megs remarks it doesn't make sense, but Stark figures he's got an edge, being human, but of course his opponent only sees weakness. During all this, the colossal armor's power dramatically plummets, though gets rejuvenated by emergency reserves. However, this damages safeties within the power cells, leading to an imminent overload. He gets knocked down, and Prime, despite his injuries, offers to give his own power, but Tony warns against it, as his armor, with some kinks still not worked out, goes into emergency shutdown. Megatron smugly remarks that he will meet his old enemy in epic, star-shaking battle eventually, just not yet.
I've got to drain the Earth of its Energon, then I've got a meeting I can't get out of, there's an appointment with an electrician I have to be home for. My schedule's just really packed right now.
He then decapitates the armor with an energy blast. I've heard of shooting your mouth off, but this is ridiculous! Megatron takes pause, however. There are a couple of Autobots absent from the field. Jazz and Bumblebee have used an orbital bounce to gain entry into the array, with Wolverine alongside them, though the trip kinda messed him up, since it's not designed for humans. The technology isn't very precise for short distances, and I gotta say, there's definitely a resemblance to the type used by Rick Sanchez. Though again, this is from 2007, so weird, wacky coincidence. Anyway, Wheeljack managed to approximate Ratchet and Prowl's location, so the three are on their way. It's not long before Logan picks up a scent, the door to the lab is shot down, I guess a different door from the one from last issue, and then he sees Spidey on a slab while Ratchet operates a console, and Prowl gets a supercharge. This sends Wolvie into a rage, but Parker webs him up before he can interrupt the process, which he volunteered for, using Megatron's Energon boosting system to enhance the Autobots. Ratchet says they need to proceed with enhancing the Energon-like substance in Spider-Man's blood, but Wolverine offers his own.
Is your blood radioactive?
No, but...
Then sit quietly over there and read a magazine.
Turns out mutant blood works just fine, and 10 minutes later, both Prowl and Ratchet have a healthy pink glow about them. B asks if they should be boosted too, but, well, I think the charge is messing with Ratchet's mind, because not only does he call him Jazz when saying there's no time, he says they need to destroy the Psycho Prism, and can tell them where to find it. Something that Prowl would know, since he's the one that actually found it. Nothing quite like misappropriated speech bubbles. Anyway, Megatron had the crystal moved, but Doom knows where to find it, so Wolvie, Jazz, and Bee follow him. Outside, because I guess everyone was just standing around for 10 minutes, Iron Man pops out in a more form-fitting armor, as another green portal appears with exiting Prowl, Ratchet, and a queasy Spider-Man.
I think my lunch is about to do its own orbital bounce.
Well, if he times it right, he can at least upchuck on Megatron's face and blind his optic sensors or something. This late in the fight, he may as well contribute something. The heroes attack Megatron together, Avengers hitting high and the Autobots going low.
Oh, gee, don't hit him in the crotch!
Yes, hit him in the crotch!
Ramjet is still guarding the prism when Doom, Wolvie, and the Autobots bust in, with some insinuation that he intends on taking it. Not that there's much context for that. In any event, he decides to follow Doom's loyalty-changing lead, and flies off, figuring that if this plan of Megatron's fails, the time will come for the Seeker to take lead of the Decepticons. Okay, so are there Decepticon Union rules dictating one of the evil airplanes has to be the power-hungry backstabber, and Starscream is just out sick for this mission? With 18 minutes left before Symkaria starts a war, Wolverine shatters the prism with his claws. Well, they did mention it was a copy of the original, so it's more of a psycho-cubic zirconium. He then heads out with his robot pals, as a rumbling indicates the structure is destabilizing. And I guess they just don't hear Doom as he muses about his burdensome glory and genius, won't have it taken away by man or machine, fixating on the shattered bauble. I suppose held in some kind of anti-gravity devices, since none of the pieces, fall to the ground or anything. The array begins collapsing, and now that Megs realizes that without the prism the battle is pointless, he bursts with the last of his added power, knocking Cap and Danvers from the sky, calling his Decepticons, and activating the emergency warp-out protocol. As his goons begin fading away to some other location, Megatron tells the Avengers how this will drain them for stellar cycles, because telling your enemies that your tank's going to be low for a few years sounds like a smart idea. He then threatens that they'll pay for his losses, but before he can finish, Spider-Man webs him up, while quoting the theme song from his 70s cartoon. I'm pretty sure that song's inherently catchy nature is so strong it bypasses any barriers across alternate realities, and that's why it pops up in later stories it has no business existing in. What, you can't say it's not possible? You're not science! Luke backs him up by charging the back of Megatron's knee, and the towering tyrant is thoroughly toppled. Prime says they've done enough and tells his Autobots to add artillery to injury, opening fire on the weakened menace. As he begins warping elsewhere, not sure why it took so long other than to give Spidey and Cage their hits in, Megs berates Prime for not facing him alone, saying he's gotten too old and weak.
I'm 10,000 years younger than you, Megatron. We've been over this before.
But he wouldn't be Megatron if he didn't promise to snuff out his life force soon enough, and warns he should regenerate and prepare for that fated day. So the day is saved, Doom likely avoided death from the collapsing dome, and the engines of war have been quieted, with Symkaria canceling their retaliatory strikes. S.H.I.E.L.D. will want a debrief from the Avengers and their mechanical allies, but the Autobots have up and vanished. Apparently they stopped by the DC Universe on their way to get their stealth tips from Batman. I joke, but there was a planned crossover with the Justice League, but that got nixed thanks to Flashpoint. And before I go on a raging tangent thanks to that nonsense, they probably used their orbital bounce, but there didn't seem to be any green glow anywhere, so anyone's guess. Shortly, the Avengers are in their Quinjet, and the Autobots back at their ARC-19 base. Prime mentions Ramjet's presence on Earth, and someone is cut off after saying that he was the only one they saw. Not sure about the context, since they all saw plenty of cons, even Seekers, but moving on. And Tony tries to work out the flaws of his giant armor, which I'll assume they'll pick up later unless they're okay with leaving it in Doom's backyard. The comic ends with Cap noting the Quinjet seems a bit sluggish, the smell seems off to Wolverine, and Wheeljack, observing their takeoff, notices the Avengers ship looks almost Cybertronian. That was the New Avengers / Transformers, and despite a few flaws, it's a lot of fun and definitely one of the better crossovers with the robots in disguise. In the last half of the story, they kind of raise a few questions, like why the Autobots didn't try their portal earlier. Though I guess you could excuse that if they weren't sure of what to find inside, that could have been fairly dangerous for them. Though if Wolverine's blood worked just as well as Spidey's, mixing into a power-boosting Energon cocktail, why did the cons not take him instead or in addition to Parker? If I had to guess, I'd say maybe they thought he would put up more of a fight, and his adamantium claws would do a lot of damage once he goes berserker. Also, considering how much Ramjet either acted or was treated like Starscream, I'm not sure why they didn't just have Starscream in the story. They don't elaborate on why Megs has so little trust in him. He's not the one that's most famous for trying to usurp leadership to Decepticons, and it's never explained why him being on Earth is so much more noteworthy than any of the other cons. It could be that the writer wanted to try giving the treacherous spotlight to someone other than Starscream, change things up a little. It's not like others haven't challenged Megatron before, but there's nothing really special about Ramjet that makes him stand out. Starscream is the duplicitous usurper, Skywarp teleports, and Thundercracker has a dog. While the pacing was overall good, I felt the passage of time didn't always feel right. It seemed to skip ahead a few hours to drive up the tension of Symkaria attacking, but I think this could have been done by having the countdown halved and changing the hours passed accordingly. We also don't really spend any time in that country or with its people to get a sense of their feelings, which I think could have helped even a little since this was about averting a war. Though, admittedly, with two relatively small nations, I guess the idea is that the cons would have started the same project up again once the territories are craters. Though anything involving larger countries would have involved more Avengers, and maybe they wanted the scale a little smaller for this. After all, they did have a sequel tease at the end, so maybe they wanted to wait until the New Avengers / Transformers 2 to bring in Thor, Hulk, and other heavier hitters. The rest of the story is really good. The art is great, giving some slight tweaks to classic Transformer designs, while also making the heroes feel natural standing next to them in their own looks at the time. Characterizations felt mostly on point. Some deviations were part of the aggression wave, but like I said before, Bumblebee thinking a couple of dead humans isn't a big deal feels wrong. I know, bigger picture and all that, but still. I'm also not sure about Danvers concurring that point, but readers more dedicated to some of these heroes may have a different view. The fights were good, though I would not have been opposed to more of the Avengers against the Decepticons, like Miss Marvel's range of powers, Cap's strategy, and so on. And while I wish Spidey had more to do, he and Cage do get to show Megatron what weak humans can do against the allegedly superior Gladiator from Tarn.
I knew the Decepticons were after me, I just knew it!
In a lot of ways, it's kind of like the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie or Captain America: The First Avenger. There are a few problems here and there, some room for improvement, but it's not bad by any measure. Too bad that, unlike those movies, it didn't get the follow-up that they were clearly setting up, but this still gets a solid recommendation. Maybe in the sequel, we could have had Hulk riding Grimlock. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.